Imagine, if you can, a rock the size of a city falling from the sky. 66 million years ago, an asteroid 10 miles wide slammed into the Earth with the force of 1 billion atomic bombs. In a heartbeat, the world changed. The shock waves circled the globe, tsunamis washed over continents, and the sky burned red. This single terrible event marked the end of the reign of the most incredible animals to ever walk this planet. We call them the terrible lizards, the dinosaurs. But their story is not just about their destruction. It is about their triumph. For over 160 million years, they ruled every corner of the Earth, from the tallest mountains to the deepest seas. They grew to sizes that defy belief, developed weapons that make nightmares seem tame, and evolved into creatures that still fly among us today. Hello everyone, I am Alex, and I invite you to join me on the ultimate journey back in time. We are going to explore the real, scientific world of the dinosaurs, stripping away the myths and revealing the amazing truths hidden in the fossils. We will walk through the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous periods to see life as it truly was. If you love learning about the prehistoric world, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an adventure. Also, take a moment to leave a comment below and tell me which dinosaur is your absolute favorite. I read every single one of your comments, and I love hearing what you think. Now, let us turn back the clock and begin our journey. It all began in the ashes of the greatest disaster the planet had ever seen. Before the first dinosaur ever took a breath, the Earth was recovering from an event known as the Permian extinction. This was a time when life itself nearly hung in the balance. 90% of all species on the planet vanished, leaving a hollow, empty world behind. The continents were not separated as they are today. Instead, they were mashed together into a single massive supercontinent known as Pangaea. Imagine a land so vast that you could walk for thousands of miles without ever seeing an ocean. The interior of this supercontinent was a harsh, unforgiving desert. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the air was dry and hot. In this difficult environment, the survivors of the Great Extinction were struggling to make a living. Among the survivors were the ancestors of the mammals, creatures called therapsids, and the ancestors of the crocodiles, known as archosaurs. For millions of years, these animals were the dominant force on land. But in the shadows, a new group of animals was evolving. They were small, they were fast, and they had a secret weapon. These were the first dinosaurs. They differed from the other reptiles because of their legs. Instead of their legs sprouting out from the side of their bodies like a lizard or a crocodile, dinosaurs had legs that were positioned directly underneath their bodies. This simple change in anatomy allowed them to move faster, breathe more efficiently, and run for longer distances without getting tired. In these early days, dinosaurs were not the giants we know them as today. They were small, bipedal predators that scurried through the underbrush, trying to avoid being eaten by the larger reptiles that ruled the Triassic. One of the earliest known dinosaurs was a little creature called Eoraptor, which means dawn stealer. It was only about 3 feet long and weighed just 10 pounds. It had sharp teeth and grasping hands, perfectly adapted for catching insects and small lizards. Living alongside Eoraptor was another early dinosaur called Herrerasaurus. This predator was a bit larger, growing up to 20 feet in length, but it was still a hunter in a world full of much larger beasts. The atmosphere of the early Triassic was tense and dangerous. It was a world of recovery and opportunity. The dinosaurs were the underdogs waiting for their chance to shine. They were evolving, adapting, and preparing for a time when they would take over the world. The stage was set, and the players were waiting in the wings for the curtain to rise on the Age of Giants. As millions of years passed, the slow grinding of the tectonic plates began to tear the supercontinent of Pangaea apart. Huge cracks opened in the Earth's crust, and lava poured out, creating new ocean basins. As the continents drifted apart, the climate began to change. The harsh, dry deserts of the Triassic were slowly replaced by lush, humid environments. It was the dawn of the Jurassic period. This shift in the climate triggered a revolution in plant life. Tall forests of conifers, ginkgos, and cycads covered the landscape. With all this new food available, the herbivorous dinosaurs began to grow. And they did not just grow a little bit. They grew to sizes that the world had never seen before. This was the age of the sauropods, the long-necked giants. Animals like Diplodocus and Apatosaurus evolved necks that could reach up to 50 feet into the air. To visualize this, imagine an animal as long as a tennis court with a neck that stretches higher than a 5-story building. These were the largest animals to ever walk the earth, much heavier than any modern elephant. Their massive size was their best defense against predators. A full-grown sauropod was simply too big to be attacked. But supporting such a massive body required incredible adaptations. Their bones were filled with air pockets, making them light but strong, similar to the bones of a bird. They had to eat constantly to fuel their enormous bodies, stripping leaves from branches with their peg-like teeth and swallowing them whole without even chewing. They likely swallowed stones, known as gastroliths, to help grind up the tough vegetation in their stomachs. Life for a sauropod was a constant migration. They traveled in herds, moving from one feeding ground to another, following the rains and the fresh growth of plants. The ground must have shaken when a herd of these giants marched by. The thumping of their feet would have been a low rumble that could be felt for miles. But where there are massive prey, there are also massive predators. The Jurassic period saw the rise of the first truly giant meat-eaters. Allosaurus was the king of the Jurassic. It was smaller than the famous Tyrannosaurus rex, but it was a formidable hunter. Allosaurus had long, sharp teeth and powerful arms with sharp claws. It likely hunted in groups or packs, working together to bring down the young or the sick members of a sauropod herd. Imagine the tension of a hunt on a Jurassic floodplain. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and vegetation. An Allosaurus waits in the shadows of the trees, watching a young Diplodocus that has strayed too far from the protection of the adults. The hunter focuses all its attention on its prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It was a high-stakes game of survival played out on a grand scale. As the Earth continued to change, the Jurassic period gave way to the Cretaceous. The continents drifted even further apart, creating new, isolated environments where evolution could experiment with strange new forms. This era saw the development of an incredible array of armored dinosaurs. Evolution is an arms race, and as predators became faster and smarter, the prey had to become tougher. This led to the development of living tanks. One of the most famous of these was Stegosaurus. It was a bizarre-looking creature with a small head near the ground and a massive back adorned with 2 rows of large, bony plates. For a long time, scientists debated what these plates were for. Were they armor? Were they for display? The most widely accepted theory today is that they were used to regulate body temperature. The plates were filled with channels for blood vessels. By turning the plates toward the sun, a Stegosaurus could warm up its blood, and by turning them away or into the wind, it could cool down. It was a built-in heating and cooling system. But the plates were not the Stegosaurus's only weapon. At the end of its tail, it had 4 long, sharp spikes. Scientists have jokingly called this the thagomizer, but it was a deadly serious weapon. If a predator like an Allosaurus tried to attack a Stegosaurus from behind, a single swing of that muscular tail could drive the spikes through the attacker's body with devastating force. It was a clear warning to stay away. In North America, the armored lineage reached its peak with Ankylosaurus. This animal looked like a walking tank. It was covered from head to toe in thick, bony armor, even having bony eyelids to protect its eyes. It was low to the ground and very wide, making it difficult for a predator to flip over. But its most famous feature was the massive club at the end of its tail. The tail vertebrae were interlocked, allowing the animal to swing the club with tremendous power. A direct hit from an Ankylosaurus club could shatter the leg bones of even the largest predators, leaving them unable to hunt and dooming them to a slow death. When faced with a threat, an Ankylosaurus would crouch down to protect its soft belly and swing that tail with everything it had. The forests of the Cretaceous were filled with the sounds of clashing horns and crashing tails, as these heavily armed herbivores defended themselves against the hunters of the time. It was a world of grit, armor, and spikes. While the armored giants were defending themselves on land, the skies and the seas were ruled by creatures that were not dinosaurs, though they lived alongside them. They were the pterosaurs and the marine reptiles. These animals prove that the age of reptiles was a global phenomenon, conquering every environment on Earth. In the oceans, the seas teemed with life that looked like it came from a nightmare. Creatures like Mosasaurus and Plesiosaurus patrolled the deep waters. Mosasaurus was a true marine monster. It was a relative of the modern monitor lizard, but it grew to lengths of over 50 feet. It had a double-hinged jaw that allowed it to open its mouth incredibly wide to swallow prey almost as big as itself. Its fins were powerful paddles that could propel it through the water at surprising speeds, making it an ambush predator of the highest order. Imagine a large shark or a smaller plesiosaur swimming in the open ocean, unaware of the danger lurking in the depths below. Suddenly, a Mosasaurus bursts upward, its jaws snapping shut with bone-crushing force. Above the waves, the air was filled with the sound of leathery wings. Pterosaurs were the first vertebrates to achieve powered flight. They were not just flying lizards. They were diverse and highly specialized. In the later Cretaceous, the largest of them all took to the skies. Quetzalcoatlus northropi. This animal is the largest flying creature ever known to science. Its wingspan was nearly 40 feet, which is wider than a fighter jet. Standing on the ground, it was as tall as a giraffe. Despite its terrifying appearance, recent studies suggest that Quetzalcoatlus might have been a stalker, walking gracefully on long, spindly legs through the fern prairies, hunting small animals, lizards, and perhaps even baby dinosaurs. It would pick them up with its long, pointed beak, swallowing them whole. The life cycle of these flying giants is equally fascinating. Fossil evidence suggests that some pterosaurs cared for their young, much like birds do today. We have found fossils of pterosaur eggs with embryos inside, showing that the babies had well-developed wing membranes, meaning they could likely fly, or at least glide, shortly after hatching. They were dedicated parents, protecting their offspring in a dangerous world. Which of these prehistoric marine monsters or flying giants do you find the most fascinating? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear if you are more afraid of the deep ocean or the open skies. The world was reaching the peak of the dinosaur era. The continents were isolated, leading to strange evolutionary paths. In South America, the largest carnivore of all time was stalking the floodplains. Giganotosaurus was a true giant, even larger than Tyrannosaurus rex. It was a Carcharodontosaurid, a group of shark's-toothed lizards that specialized in slicing through flesh. Giganotosaurus did not have the bone-crushing bite of the T-Rex. Instead, it had teeth like steak knives, designed to inflict deep, bleeding wounds. It hunted the biggest herbivores that ever lived, the titanosaurs. Argentinosaurus was so massive that it weighed nearly 100 tons. To put that in perspective, that is the weight of 15 African elephants. The interaction between a predator like Giganotosaurus and prey like Argentinosaurus represents the ultimate biological arms race. In North America, the environment was different. It was a coastal plain, dotted with rivers and swamps. Here lived the most famous dinosaur of all time, Tyrannosaurus rex. But T-Rex was not just a monster. It was a marvel of biological engineering. Its skull was 6 feet long, lined with teeth the size of bananas. These teeth were serrated and designed to crush bone. We know this because we have found T-Rex coprolites, fossilized dung, that contain fragments of bone. This tells us that T-Rex did not just eat meat, it consumed the entire animal, extracting every ounce of nutrition. But the most terrifying aspect of the T-Rex was not its mouth, but its brain. It had one of the largest brains relative to its body size of any large theropod. Its eyes were forward-facing, giving it binocular vision, similar to a hawk or a human. This means it could see in 3 dimensions and judge distances with incredible accuracy. It was not a sluggish scavenger, as some scientists once thought. It was an intelligent, super-fast ambush predator. Imagine the feeling of a small Triceratops or Edmontosaurus grazing peacefully in a Cretaceous meadow. The ground is damp, the air is thick with the scent of rotting vegetation and flowers. Suddenly, the silence is broken. A shadow falls over the landscape. The ground begins to vibrate, not with the rhythmic thud of a sauropod, but with the heavy, thumping tread of a high-strung killer. The T-Rex explodes from the tree line. The hunt is over in seconds. The efficiency and power of this animal are unmatched in the history of life on Earth. It was the perfect predator, the king of a lost world. While the giants grabbed all the headlines, a quiet revolution was happening in the undergrowth. We used to think of dinosaurs as slow, dim-witted, scaly beasts. But in the last few decades, a discovery in a place called Liaoning Province in China has completely changed our understanding of the prehistoric world. Here, in ancient lake beds, paleontologists found fossils of exquisite detail. They found dinosaurs with feathers. These were not birds. They were non-avian dinosaurs, but they were covered in plumage. From the small chicken-sized Microraptor to the larger Velociraptor, feathers were everywhere. This tells us that feathers likely evolved for warmth or display long before they were ever used for flight. Microraptor is a perfect example of this transition. It had 4 wings, 2 on its arms and 2 on its legs. It could glide from tree to tree, hunting small mammals and lizards in the dense forests. The fossils have even preserved the pigment melanin, allowing scientists to determine that Microraptor had iridescent black feathers, shining blue and green like a crow or a starling. This changes the way we visualize the past. The terrifying Velociraptor, made famous by movies, was actually about the size of a turkey and covered in feathers. It looked more like a terrifying eagle than a scaly lizard. This connection between dinosaurs and birds is undeniable. The skeletal structure of a chicken is almost identical to that of a T-Rex, just scaled down. The wishbone, the hollow bones, the three-toed feet. It is all there. Even the lungs are similar. If you could travel back to the Cretaceous and listen to the sounds of the forest, you wouldn't just hear roars and hisses. You would hear chirping, cooing, and the rustle of feathers. It paints a much more vibrant and colorful picture of the lost world. It reminds us that evolution is not a straight line, but a complex branching tree, and that the dinosaurs never truly died out. They just got smaller, grew feathers, and learned to fly. We see them every day outside our windows. They are the birds, singing in the morning light, carrying the legacy of the dinosaurs into the modern age. The sun was setting on the age of dinosaurs. The late Cretaceous was a time of incredible diversity, but also of rising tensions. The Deccan traps in modern-day India were erupting on a massive scale, spewing lava and greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The climate was becoming unstable. Sea levels were dropping, changing habitats and migratory routes. The dinosaurs, ruling for over 160 million years, were facing a changing world. And then, the final blow arrived. It was a typical day, 66 million years ago. In the shallow seas that covered much of North America, a large ammonite was floating near the surface, unaware that its fossilized remains would mark the exact moment of the catastrophe. Above the atmosphere, a comet or asteroid 9 miles wide was hurtling toward Earth. It entered the atmosphere at a speed that compressed the air in front of it, generating temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. When it hit the Yucatan Peninsula, the energy release was apocalyptic. The bedrock was liquefied, tossing massive tsunamis that swept across the Gulf of Mexico and inland. A fireball expanded outward, incinerating anything within a radius of hundreds of miles. But the worst was yet to come. The impact threw vaporized rock, ash, and debris high into space. As this ejecta fell back to Earth, it burned up in the atmosphere, turning the sky into a broiler. The global temperature spiked. Animals that were lucky enough to survive the initial blast were cooked by the heat of the re-entering debris. Then came the long, cold winter. The dust and soot blocked the sun for months, perhaps years. Photosynthesis stopped, plants died, the herbivores starved, the predators followed. It was a domino effect of extinction. The large animals, requiring the most food, were the first to go. The mighty T-Rex, the armored Ankylosaurus, the horned Triceratops, they all vanished. The earth fell silent, save for the wind blowing over the graves of the giants. It was the end of an era, a closing chapter in the history of life. But in the darkness, small, furry creatures, our ancestors, the mammals, huddled in their burrows, waiting for the sun to return. The dust eventually settled. The skies cleared. The sun warmed the earth once more. But the world was no longer the domain of the dinosaurs. The giant reptiles were gone, leaving only the birds as their legacy. The mammals emerged from the shadows, diversifying and growing larger, eventually leading to us. The story of the dinosaurs is not just a story of monsters and rocks. It is a story of how fragile life is and how resilient it can be. It is a warning that our planet is capable of immense change, sometimes in an instant. But mostly, it is a story of wonder. For over 160 million years, these animals filled every niche, evolved into every shape, and conquered every continent. They were the apex life forms on this planet for a time span that dwarfs the entire history of humanity. We look at their bones in museums, and we try to imagine them breathing, moving, and hunting. We use science to give them color, feathers, and behavior. We are still learning, still digging, and still finding new fossils that rewrite the textbooks. It is up to us to remember them, to study them, and to tell their story, because without them, we would not be here. Their extinction paved the way for our rise. They were the kings of the earth, and they will never truly be forgotten as long as we keep looking into the past. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the age of dinosaurs. I hope you enjoyed learning about these magnificent creatures as much as I enjoyed sharing their stories with you. If you made it this far, you are a true fan of prehistoric life. Don't forget to let me know in the comments. If you could bring back one dinosaur using modern science, which one would you choose, and why? Would it be the peaceful Brachiosaurus or the mighty Tyrannosaurus Rex? I read every single comment, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel for more documentaries about the history of our planet, and hit that bell icon to get notified about our next adventure. Until next time, keep exploring, keep wondering, and stay curious. Goodbye.